However, on the way to Valinor, there is some kind of problem, which is how she somehow ends up on a raft with Halbrand and other people. But then the sea monster strikes, and they all die, except for Galadriel and Halbrand.
Listen.
At
JD, Patrick, yeah.
Who were then rescued by Elendil, who happens to be sailing around in the area.
Nerdrotic.com.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have an important vote coming up, and the one thing I'm going to ask you all to do, all over 590,000 of you in the fellowship, is to abstain. Don't vote. That's right. You heard me. No, I'm not talking about Tuesday. I'm talking about the People's Choice Awards. And let's be real, there's no danger of anybody actually watching the People's Choice Awards, much less voting on it. So far be it from me to question elections on this platform. If there's any votes at all for the Rings of Power, it'll probably be bots. Because the people have already made their choice not to ever watch this show again, and thankfully, it's going to be 2 years, but if you just need a quick reminder of what just happened over the last 2 months, we have the Rotten Tomatoes score, the Metacritic score, the Superfan trailer, which was ratioed and unlisted, the first teaser trailer, ratioed, the second teaser trailer, ratioed, the first official trailer, ratioed, the second official trailer, ratioed, the last trailer for the last episode of Season 1, ratioed, and let's not forget the Super Bowl trailer, which was ratioed to the tune of 1.9 million dislikes after YouTube removed over 1 million, after Amazon removed almost 40,000 comments, which are still coming in to this very day, bless you. That's on top of Amazon deleting reviews from IMDb, the site that they own, and deleting reviews on the streaming service they own, Prime Video, and that was after delaying reviews for a week. But wait, we were told by Amazon that this was an incredibly popular show. 25 million people watched the first 2 episodes in the first day, according to Amazon. We also heard from the architect of this disaster, Jennifer Salke, who happens to run Amazon Studios, that the show was approaching 100 million total views, according to Amazon. And since then, crickets. And now the willing and able partners in the Access Media are starting to turn on their giant behemoth corporate overlords. From Variety's VIP section, Amazon's silence on the Rings of Power audience size is deafening, and this is one of 3 articles on this subject in the last week. The Rings of Power is theoretically among the most watched Amazon Prime original series ever. So why is the tech giant so cautious about its following? Well, the answer is obvious, Variety. It doesn't have one. Throughout the fantasy series' entire 6-week run, Amazon has released only one figure quantifying its performance, claiming the first 2 episodes were streamed by 25 million viewers worldwide in the first 24 hours of availability. And in the 3 weeks since the season 1 finale, the company has been equally quiet, with only a line in its Q3 earnings report saying that The Rings of Power is approaching 100 million viewers to date, a vague figure that Amazon Studios head Jennifer Salke previously revealed in an interview with Variety. Again, for the most part, streaming services do not share their numbers because they're extraordinarily low considering the price tag of some of these shows. Just go look at what Warner Brothers is doing right now. As the article points out, this is a very expensive show, and extraordinary numbers would get more people to watch it. A good story would create fan engagement. The only fan engagement with the Rings of Power is the Tolkien fans furious at Amazon for vandalizing the professor's work. Still, Rings performed very well according to Nielsen metrics, bringing in some of the biggest weekly viewership numbers ever for a Prime Video series, though it fell short of the peaks of Reacher and Terminalist. So, according to Amazon insiders, who I cannot name, so take it for whatever it's worth, this show couldn't just be a normal hit. It had to be the biggest hit, and not just for Prime Video, for all streaming services. It needed to be bigger than Stranger Things, and not just for a couple of weeks or a month. It needed to chart for a long time, and it's already starting to fall. Still, the pattern suggests that the Rings audience has been shrinking over the course of the season, with little catch-up in new viewers taking place in the middle of the season. Although viewing time increased again, it failed to reach the heights of the first weeks of the series release. The steeper, around 20% drop from the first 2 weeks also suggests suggests that many of the viewers who watched the show early on didn't watch it, which isn't a great sign for its growth potential. You're always looking for that growth potential, am I right, ladies? It's also a stark contrast, that's a little on the nose, to today's other sensational fantasy series, HBO's House of the Dragon. Hot D, a damn good show, by the way, and that's a complete surprise to me, honestly, which has often been compared to Rings in the press and everywhere else. The Game of Thrones prequel grew its weekly viewership significantly early before settling on the same level as Rings. Not bad for a series that cost half as much as the Rings of Power on a platform that has half as much subscribers. Fact of the matter is, House of the Dragon is destroying the Rings of Power when you count the streaming viewers and the linear viewers. By the way, the House of the Dragon finale had 9.3 million overnight viewers. It's simply impossible to know how the Rings of Power stacks up against House of the Dragon's numbers. Are the nearly 100 million viewers cumulative across all episodes? Is each episode averaging close to 100 million viewers? How does it compare to other Prime Video hits like The Boys? We'll never know because they'll never tell. Let's just stop playing games right now. We have all the data we need in all of those aforementioned ratios. But it doesn't end there. Amazon has been suspiciously quiet about the Rings of Power viewership in the 2 weeks since the first season concluded. This is from Business Insider, and they share the Google Trends, which is looking a lot like the upcoming election day.
I'm gonna come.
And I don't want to undersell this. Amazon just had its Q3 earnings call, and they only mentioned the Rings of Power once, which was a reference Jennifer Salke made a month ago in a Variety article. Fan engagement is why Jeff Bezos said he wanted his Game of Thrones, and this paragraph tells the story, and it involves a Game of Thrones spinoff. The difference in interest in both series was also reflected in social media conversation. The House of the Dragon hashtag on TikTok has over 7 billion views, while the Rings of Power hashtag has nearly 800 million. Damn, I'd almost feel sorry for Amazon if they weren't such assholes. It could be because Rings of Power struggled to attract young viewers. The Drive Online engagement, according to Nielsen data released earlier this month, 71% of its audience was 35 and older. That's not just an Amazon problem, that's a Hollywood problem. Kids don't watch streaming services. And apparently, the TikTokers that you got to get kids to watch your show didn't watch your streaming service either.
Which is better, House of the Dragon or Rings of Power? Well, I haven't watched Rings of Power yet because I'm going to binge it. I don't want to watch them both at the same time. And House of the Dragon started first. So I was already taken. So I've got to wait. So I don't know. But so far, House of the Dragon's really good. So Rings of Power's got to do big things if it's going to be better than that one. A lot of talking about my girl Galadriel.
Yeah.
That is never going to get old. Neither is the guy pissing in the corner at your influencer event for the trailer premiere. Now, before I give you the idea that the Business Insider is turning things around and starting to practice things like journalism, they write this. But audience reaction was harsh, with the show receiving a 39% Rotten Tomatoes audience score, but an 85% critic score. Amazon has contested that the show was review bombed, in which people purposely try to lower a movie or a show's user ratings, usually for racist or sexist reasons. Let's just break this narrative once and for all. Sure, there are trolls. There are not enough of them to lower a film, or in this case, a show score this low. It is genuine. What is far more likely is there's a $1 trillion company that we'll just call Amazon that happens to know they have a giant turd on their hands. They've already employed influencers and critics. Why wouldn't they employ a few thousand people or some bot farms to raise a score they know will be awful? It's not like we don't have quotes from one of the showrunners and Jennifer Salke admitting they knew they were headed for trouble, and we'll get to that in just a moment. Indeed, racist fans, or maybe just fans, criticized the fact that black actors were playing some characters. You mean the elves of color, the dwarves of color, or the Harfoots of color, and one of them didn't make it. Well, that was something Amazon was pushing from day one because they wanted to push the identity politics so they could use that identity to hide behind as a shield from criticism. But it's impossible to know how widespread the review bombing was. Oh, from Amazon's side, it was pretty widespread. For what it's worth, the show has a decent but not spectacular 3.4 star rating out of 5 on Prime Video itself. After it deleted thousands of reviews, I'm sure it's really much lower than that, especially when you go there and you see all the 1-star reviews that somehow just aren't counted, or they just don't exist at all. Where Amazon paused reviews for a week after the premiere to weed out the trolls. You have to be smoking a Joe Rogan amount of the sticky icky to believe this shit. But wait, we're not done with the Rings of Power's shrinkage problem. The Rings of Power's audience shrank every week. A new report suggests that the viewership from Amazon Prime's The Rings of Power steadily declined with each new episode, something we can see with the Nielsen's.
You mean shrinkage?
Yes!
Again, something Amazon, the showrunners, and Jennifer Salke knew was going to happen, but they didn't have any idea how bad the backlash would be. She, Jennifer Salke, told the outlet that she saw the criticism. We all saw it coming. There were no surprises. Having insight into our global audience, we also have insight into the darker sides of how people can manipulate reviews, or giant corporations, and have other points of view that we wouldn't support, she revealed, like respecting the lore. Ultimately, that's what the fandom had a problem with. It wasn't really your casting because it was insignificant. Nobody was asking for repurposed hobbits. Nobody was asking for repurposed Gandalf. Nobody was asking for a repurposed Lord of the Rings in the Second Age. No one was asking for a weak and witless Gil-galad and Celebrimbor. No one was asking for Mubarber Numenorians. No one was asking for an origin of Mithril, Mordor, or Mount Doom. And nobody was asking for Warrior Galadriel and then shipping her with Sauron. Hell, even your own cast was clowning the showrunners.
Which is how she somehow ends up on a raft with Halbrand and other people. But then the sea monster strikes and they all die, except for Galadriel and Halbrand.
Listen.
At
JD, Patrick. Yeah.
Who were then rescued by Elendil, who happens to be sailing around in the area.
You work for me, remember? I know what you did. You're a damn predator. All right, just get the hell out of here, huh? I got a goddamn campaign.
No one was asking for intersectional feminist Tolkien. Like I said before, the spin has only just begun, and my God, we have over 2 years of this. Lindsay Weber, who we'll get back to in just a second, already teased that the show creators have some epic things in store for the new episode, saying that it's going to be more gritty, more intense, maybe a little scarier now that Sauron's true identity is finally out in the open, except for the fact that, well, we knew Halbrand was Sauron the whole time, and the audience figured that out probably within the first episode. Now, I know there's been some scuttlebutt out there that the showrunners are finally listening to the fans. I tell you, they're doing what they've always done. Talk out of both sides of their mouth. Weber wasn't the only one who made big promises for season 2 of The Rings of Power. Co-showrunner Patrick McKay said the new season will be bigger and better on every level by an order of magnitude. Part of this may have something to do with the fact that he and co-showrunner JD Payne took audience criticism from season 1 into consideration. Remember, I said that Salke knew this criticism was coming? Well, the showrunners did too. The cake was kind of baked before the audience response came in, he said. Certainly, you look at audience response and you see what characters people love. That would be none, and what kind of storytelling moves them to fall asleep. And explaining that, while he and McKay aren't over-correcting for any of it, they are listening to the people's responses. Co-showrunner Patrick McKay says this in Vanity Fair. So I think in some ways the audience response, we're a year ahead of that because we saw it a year ago, and we're like, here it's really seeming to work, and here maybe it's not working as well as we might have hoped or thought it would. So to that extent, there's a course correction. It's just us building on strengths of the show and on the strengths of our actors and our designers. Well, then they're screwed because they have absolutely nothing to work with. Was there a response that surprised you? McKay, a little bit. Other than extremes, which can be very loud, the extreme being the majority, whether it's people who are like, love, 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 outside of Twitter, didn't see much of that, or people who hate, hate, hate generally, Saw a lot of that. When you sift through the noise, you realize you have a giant piece of shit. No, that's not what he says. I think we feel that people see the same show we do. A piece of shit. We have heard the rumors from a man, Chris Gore, that the showrunners might end up being Fall Guys, and we might have to wait till after award season to see if that actually happens. I also heard that they're going to go for a full-on reboot with this series and try to pretend that the last 2 months didn't happen. Roll out the publicity, maybe roll out some more influencers, and try to get people to binge the Rings of Power. Good luck. And to add to that, what if I told you that the Rings of Power did not start this way? It was never meant to be a woke intersectional disaster. It didn't have not Gandalf. It didn't have repurposed hobbits. It didn't have Halbrand as Sauron, and it didn't have Warrior Galadriel. What if I told you this show was usurped by people like Lindsay Weber and Jennifer Salke? And what if I told you that the fan attacks came from the top? More on that in my next Rings of Power video. It didn't need to be this way. I think we'd all love to be rooting for a good Lord of the Rings show, but that's not what this is. This is an Amazon product, and it has very little chance of succeeding with the same people after 2 years. I'm guessing you're going to lose half of your audience in the first episode of season 2, and it's just going to go down from there. I'm guessing you're going to end up a lot like Westworld, which just so happens to be another bad reboot product that just got canceled, except the big difference is Westworld had a good first season. You might have had a chance if you just had a normal bad show and didn't attack the fans, but you did, and now you're going to suffer the consequences of the perfect failure, because that's what this is. The one thing Amazon did right was everything wrong. If you like what you heard, please like, share, and subscribe. If you didn't like what you heard, I thank you for listening this long. I will see you in the next video.
Nerdrotic.com.
Cast it into the fire!